The crystal champagne glass shattered against the marble floor, sending 1,000 glittering pieces across the ballroom like frozen tears. Emma stood there, her cheap dress soaked with expensive champagne, as 300 people in designer gowns and tailored suits turned to stare. Her husband Marcus stood above her on the grand staircase, his face twisted with disgust, his finger pointing at her like she was something dirty he'd stepped in. "This is exactly why you don't belong here." Marcus's voice echoed through the silent ballroom. "Look at you. You're an embarrassment. Your dress probably cost less than the napkins at this party." Emma's hands trembled as champagne dripped from her hair onto her shoulders. The woman who had thrown the drink, Marcus's boss's wife, Victoria, stood beside him, her perfectly painted lips curved in a cruel smile. The diamond necklace around Victoria's neck probably cost more than Emma had earned in her entire life. But what happened next? What Marcus said next? That was the moment that would change everything forever. "I should have listened to my mother," Marcus announced to the entire room, his voice cold and sharp as a blade. "She told me not to marry trash from the streets. She told me you'd never be good enough for our family. And you know what? She was right." Emma felt her heart crack inside her chest. But she didn't know, none of them knew, that in exactly 48 hours, a silver Rolls-Royce would pull up to their apartment building. A man in an expensive suit would step out, carrying documents that would reveal a secret so massive, so completely unbelievable, that Marcus would fall to his knees and beg. But that was 2 days away. Right now, in this moment, Emma was just a poor girl in a wet dress, surrounded by people who thought she was nothing. Where are you watching this from? Drop your country in the comments below. And if you want to see what happens when the truth finally comes out, don't go anywhere. This story is just getting started. Let me take you back to where this all began. Back to 3 years ago, when Emma first met Marcus, and her life seemed like it might finally become the fairy tale she dreamed about since she was a little girl. Emma Rodriguez grew up in the poorest part of the city, in a tiny apartment that always smelled like mold and old cooking oil. Her mother had died when Emma was only 7 years old, and her father had disappeared. Just vanished one day when she was 8, like smoke in the wind. The social workers told her he'd abandoned her. They said he was probably dead, or in jail, or had run away to start a new life without the burden of a daughter. Emma had cried for months, waiting by the window every evening, hoping to see his face. But he never came back. She grew up in foster homes after that. Some were okay, some were terrible. But Emma learned to survive. She learned to be invisible when she needed to be, to work hard, to never complain. By the time she turned 18, she was completely alone in the world, with nothing but a high school diploma and a determination to make something of herself. She worked 3 jobs to pay for community college. In the mornings, she cleaned office buildings, scrubbing toilets and emptying trash cans while the sun came up. During the day, she attended classes, studying business administration because she dreamed of one day having a real career, maybe even her own small company. In the evenings, she waited tables at a diner called Rosie's, serving coffee and pancakes to tired truck drivers and late-night office workers. Emma was 23 years old, exhausted down to her bones, but still hopeful that life would get better. That's when Marcus walked into Rosie's diner. It was a rainy Tuesday evening in October. Emma remembered it perfectly because the rain was coming down so hard that the streets looked like rivers, and hardly anyone was coming in. She was wiping down tables, trying to stay busy, when the door opened and he walked in. Marcus Chun was the most handsome man Emma had ever seen in real life. He wore an expensive gray suit that probably cost more than Emma's entire wardrobe. His black hair was perfectly styled, and when he smiled at her, Emma felt her heart do a little flip in her chest. "Coffee, please," he said, sitting at the counter. "And whatever pie you recommend." Emma's hands shook slightly as she poured his coffee. "The apple pie is really good today," she managed to say. "Rosie makes it fresh every morning." Marcus smiled at her again, and Emma noticed his eyes were warm and kind. "Then I'll trust you. Apple pie it is." That was the first time they talked. Marcus came back the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. He always sat at the counter, always ordered coffee, and always found reasons to chat with Emma while she worked. "You're different from other girls," Marcus told her one evening, about 2 weeks after they'd first met. "You're real. You're not trying to impress anyone or pretend to be something you're not." Emma laughed, gesturing at her stained waitress uniform. "Trust me, there's nothing impressive to pretend about." "That's where you're wrong," Marcus said, and his voice was serious now. "You work 3 jobs. You're putting yourself through college. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met, and you don't even realize it." Emma felt her cheeks get hot. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. Over the next 3 months, Marcus and Emma fell in love. At least, that's what Emma thought was happening. Marcus took her on dates to restaurants she could never afford, bought her small gifts, a scarf, a book, flowers, and told her she was beautiful. He kissed her for the first time outside Rosie's diner on a cold December night, with snow falling around them like something from a movie. "I love you, Emma Rodriguez," Marcus whispered against her lips. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." Emma believed him. She believed every word. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the courthouse. Emma wore a simple white dress she'd bought at a thrift store for $30. Marcus wore his suit. They had no guests, no family, no big celebration. Just the 2 of them and a judge who pronounced them husband and wife in less than 10 minutes. "We'll have a big party later," Marcus promised, holding her hand as they walked out of the courthouse. "When I get that promotion I've been working toward. We'll celebrate properly then." Emma didn't care about parties. She was just happy to finally have a family again, to have someone who loved her, someone who would never leave her the way everyone else in her life had left her. But things started to change almost immediately after the wedding. The first sign came when Marcus took Emma to meet his mother, Patricia Chun, at her enormous house in the wealthiest part of the city. The house was like something from a magazine, all white marble and crystal chandeliers and furniture that looked like no one was actually supposed to sit on it. Patricia Chun was a tall, elegant woman with sharp eyes and perfectly styled silver hair. She looked Emma up and down like Emma was an insect she'd found in her kitchen. "So you're the waitress my son married," Patricia said, her voice dripping with disdain. She didn't offer her hand to shake. She didn't smile. "I suppose I should have expected this." Marcus always did have a weakness for charity cases. Emma felt like she'd been slapped. Marcus stood beside her, and Emma waited for him to defend her, to tell his mother that Emma wasn't a charity case, that he loved her. But Marcus just looked uncomfortable. "Mom, please," he said quietly. "Can we just have a nice dinner?" That should have been Emma's first warning. But she was young and in love, and she convinced herself that things would get better, that Patricia would warm up to her eventually. She was wrong. Over the next 2 years, Emma's life slowly became a nightmare. So gradually that she didn't even realize it was happening until she was trapped. Marcus's promotion came through 3 months after their wedding, and suddenly they were attending fancy parties and business dinners with his colleagues and their wealthy families. Marcus bought expensive suits and a luxury car. He moved them into a penthouse apartment that Emma thought was too big, too expensive, too much. "We need to look the part," Marcus explained when Emma worried about the cost. "In my position, appearances matter. You'll understand eventually." But Emma didn't understand. She felt more and more out of place in their new life. The other wives at Marcus's business events wore designer dresses and talked about their vacation homes and their personal trainers and their shopping trips to Paris. Emma wore the same 3 dresses she'd bought at discount stores, and she had nothing to contribute to their conversations. The women started to notice. They whispered when Emma walked by. They gave her fake smiles that didn't reach their eyes. And slowly, so slowly Emma barely noticed it happening, Marcus started to change. He stopped telling her she was beautiful. He started criticizing the way she dressed, the way she talked, even the way she walked. "Can't you try to fit in?" He'd snap at her after parties. "Do you know how embarrassing it is when my boss asks what you do, and you have to admit you're still working at that diner?" "I'm almost finished with my degree," Emma would protest. "Just 1 more semester, and then I can get a real job." "A degree from a community college," Marcus would interrupt, his voice cruel. "That's not impressive, Emma. That's not going to help me advance in my career. Emma started to understand that Marcus hadn't married her because he loved her. He'd married her because she'd made him feel important, like a hero saving a poor girl from her terrible life. But now that he was climbing higher in his company, now that he was surrounded by wealthy, successful people, Emma wasn't a project that made him feel good anymore. She was an embarrassment. Marcus's mother made things worse. Patricia called regularly, always when Emma was home alone, always with the same message. You're ruining my son's life. You're holding him back. If you really loved him, you'd divorce him and let him find someone from his own class. Emma tried to talk to Marcus about it, tried to tell him how much his mother's words hurt her. But Marcus would just sigh and say, My mother has a point, Emma. Look at you. Look at where you came from. Can you blame her for worrying about our family's reputation? Our family's reputation. As if Emma wasn't part of the family. As if she was just some outsider who'd forced her way in. The worst part was that Emma still loved him. She remembered the kind man who'd come into Rosie's diner, who'd told her she was strong and beautiful and real. She kept hoping that man would come back, that this cold stranger wearing Marcus's face would disappear and her husband would return. She was still hoping when Marcus told her about the company gala. It's the biggest event of the year, Marcus explained, barely looking at her as he adjusted his tie in the mirror. This was 2 weeks before the champagne incident, before everything exploded. All the executives will be there, including the CEO. This is my chance to make a real impression, to show them I deserve the vice president position. Emma's stomach twisted with anxiety. I'll try to find a nice dress, she said quietly. Maybe I can borrow something from... No, Marcus interrupted sharply. You're not coming. Emma felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. What? But I'm your wife. Don't they expect? I'll tell them you're sick, Marcus said, still not meeting her eyes. It's better this way, Emma. Trust me. You'll make things awkward. Emma stood there in their expensive apartment, surrounded by furniture they couldn't really afford and a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. And she finally asked the question she'd been avoiding for months. Do you even love me anymore? Marcus finally turned to look at her, and the expression on his face was worse than anger. It was indifference, like she was a problem he was tired of dealing with. I don't know, he said. I don't think I ever did. Not really. I think I just felt sorry for you. Those words cut deeper than anything else he'd ever said. Emma felt tears burning in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She'd cried enough in her life. She was done crying for people who didn't care about her. Fine, Emma said, her voice steadier than she felt. I won't go to your party. But then, 3 days before the gala, everything changed. Emma was cleaning their apartment. Marcus had stopped paying for a cleaning service, saying they needed to cut costs, though he somehow still had money for his expensive suits and his luxury car, when her phone rang. It was an unknown number, but Emma answered anyway. Hello, is this Emma Rodriguez? A man's voice asked. He sounded professional, formal. Yes, this is Emma. Ms. Rodriguez, my name is Richard Sterling. I'm calling from the law firm Sterling, Hamilton and Associates. We've been trying to locate you for quite some time. It's regarding your father, Carlos Rodriguez. Emma's heart stopped. Her father, the man who'd abandoned her 15 years ago, who she'd convinced herself was probably dead. My father. Emma's voice came out as barely a whisper. Is he alive? Ms. Rodriguez, I think it would be best if we met in person to discuss this, Richard Sterling said. There are some matters regarding your father's estate that require your immediate attention. Would you be available to come to our office tomorrow morning? Estate? Emma's mind was spinning. Yes, I can come tomorrow. After she hung up, Emma just stood there in the middle of the apartment, her phone still in her hand, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Her father had an estate. That meant he'd died, and he'd left something for her. Emma didn't tell Marcus about the phone call. Some instinct told her to keep it secret, to wait and see what this was about before involving him. The next morning, while Marcus was at work, Emma took the bus across the city to the address Richard Sterling had given her. The law firm was in one of those tall glass buildings downtown, the kind with fancy revolving doors and security guards in the lobby. Emma felt out of place in her simple jeans and jacket, surrounded by people in expensive business clothes. But she took the elevator to the 23rd floor and walked into Sterling, Hamilton and Associates with her head held high. Richard Sterling was a distinguished-looking man in his 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He stood up when Emma entered his office and shook her hand warmly. "Ms. Rodriguez, thank you for coming. Please, sit down." Emma sat in the leather chair across from his massive desk, her hands folded in her lap to keep them from shaking. "Ms. Rodriguez," Richard began gently, "I have some news that will likely come as quite a shock. Your father, Carlos Rodriguez, passed away 6 months ago." Emma felt a strange mix of emotions. Grief for a father she barely remembered, anger at a man who'd abandoned her, confusion about why this lawyer was telling her this now. "He left me something?" Emma asked quietly. Richard Sterling's expression was serious. "Ms. Rodriguez, what I'm about to tell you will change your life. Your father didn't abandon you 15 years ago. He had to disappear to protect you." Emma's breath caught. "What? I don't understand." "Your father was a brilliant businessman who built a technology empire from nothing," Richard explained. "But when you were 8 years old, he discovered that dangerous people were threatening his family. Threatening you specifically, to manipulate his business decisions. To keep you safe, he made the impossibly difficult decision to fake his death and disappear from your life. He placed you in foster care under a false identity, believing that if these dangerous people thought he was dead and couldn't connect you to him, you'd be safe." Emma felt dizzy. This couldn't be real. This sounded like something from a movie. "For the past 15 years, Richard continued, your father built his company into one of the largest technology corporations in the world. He became a billionaire, Ms. Rodriguez. But he never forgot about you. He had investigators keeping track of you, making sure you were safe, watching you from a distance. He saw you graduate high school. He knew about your jobs, your education, even your marriage." Tears were streaming down Emma's face now. Her father had been watching her. He hadn't abandoned her. He'd been protecting her. 6 months ago, your father died of a sudden heart attack, Richard said softly. But before he died, he made very specific arrangements. He left everything to you, Ms. Rodriguez. His entire estate, his company, his fortune. The room seemed to tilt. Emma gripped the arms of her chair to steady herself. How much?" Emma managed to ask. Richard Sterling looked at her with an expression that might have been sympathy or perhaps respect. $20 billion, Ms. Rodriguez. You've just inherited $20 billion. Emma couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. $20 billion. That was more money than she could even imagine. But there's a condition, Richard continued. Your father was very specific in his will. He wanted to test the people in your life. He wanted to see who truly cared about you and who was only interested in your money. So he instructed us to wait exactly 6 months after his death before revealing your inheritance to you. Richard pulled out a thick folder of documents and placed them on the desk between them. For the past 6 months, we've been conducting an investigation into your life, Ms. Rodriguez. Your husband, your marriage, everyone in your social circle. Your father wanted to make absolutely certain that you were protected from people who might try to take advantage of you. Emma thought about Marcus, about his coldness, his cruelty, his mother's terrible words, about how he'd told her just days ago that he didn't think he'd ever really loved her. And, Emma asked, her voice barely audible, what did you find? Richard Sterling's expression was sympathetic but firm. I think you already know, Ms. Rodriguez. Your husband has been planning to divorce you. He's been consulting with a divorce attorney for the past 3 months. He's been having an affair with his boss's wife, Victoria Hamilton, for the past 6 months. And he's been telling everyone in his social circle that you're an embarrassment to him. That he married you as a charity project and now regrets it. Each word was like a knife to Emma's heart. But somehow, she wasn't surprised. Deep down, she'd known. She'd felt it happening, even if she hadn't wanted to admit it. Here's what's going to happen, Richard said. his voice becoming more businesslike. "In 2 days, there's a company gala that your husband will be attending. I understand you were not invited." Emma nodded, unable to speak. "Well, Ms. Rodriguez, I think you should attend anyway. And I think it's time that everyone, especially your husband, learned the truth about exactly who you are." Emma looked at Richard Sterling, at the documents on his desk that proved her father had never stopped loving her, that proved she was worth more than Marcus and his cruel mother and all those snobby people at parties had ever imagined. And for the first time in years, Emma felt something other than sadness or fear or exhaustion. She felt powerful. "What do I need to do?" Emma asked. Richard smiled. "First, we're going to get you a proper dress for that gala. Then, we're going to make sure you make an entrance that no one will ever forget. But Ms. Rodriguez, I need you to understand something very important." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "Once the truth comes out, your life will never be the same. People will treat you differently. They'll want things from you. They'll pretend they always cared about you. Your husband will almost certainly change his tune completely. You need to be prepared for that." Emma thought about Marcus's face when he told her he didn't think he'd ever really loved her. She thought about his mother calling her trash. She thought about Victoria Hamilton and all those other women who'd looked at her like she was dirt on their expensive shoes. "I'm ready," Emma said firmly. And that's how Emma Rodriguez spent the next 2 days preparing for the moment that would turn her entire world upside down. Richard Sterling introduced her to a personal stylist who took her to exclusive boutiques Emma had only ever seen from the outside. They found a dress. Not cheap, not simple, but elegant and beautiful and perfectly tailored to her. They did her hair and her makeup. They taught her how to walk and stand and speak with confidence. But the most important thing Richard Sterling gave Emma was information. He showed her all the reports his investigators had compiled about Marcus. The emails between Marcus and Victoria Hamilton, planning their affair. The text messages where Marcus complained about Emma to his friends, calling her dead weight and an anchor around my neck. The financial records showing that Marcus had been hiding money, preparing to divorce Emma and leave her with nothing. "Your father wanted you to have all the facts," Richard explained. "He wanted you to see people's true colors before they knew about your money. He was protecting you one last time." Emma read every page, and with each new piece of evidence, her sadness turned into something harder, something stronger. By the time the night of the gala arrived, Emma wasn't the scared, uncertain girl who'd been cleaning her apartment just days before. She was a 25-year-old woman who just discovered she was one of the richest people in the world, and she was ready to face the people who treated her like she was worthless. Richard Sterling arrived at her apartment building in a silver Rolls-Royce. Emma had told Marcus she was visiting a friend that evening, and he'd barely looked up from his phone when she left. He had no idea where she was really going. "Remember," Richard said as they drove toward the hotel where the gala was being held, "you don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't owe anyone anything. You're Emma Rodriguez, and you're worth more than all of them combined, literally and figuratively." Emma smiled, looking at her reflection in the car window. She barely recognized herself in the elegant dress, with her hair and makeup done professionally. She looked like she belonged at a fancy gala. No, she looked like she owned the place. The gala was being held at the Grandview Hotel, the most expensive venue in the city. Emma had never been inside before. The ballroom was enormous, with soaring ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and a grand staircase that swept down from the second floor. Everywhere Emma looked, she saw wealthy people in expensive clothes, holding champagne glasses, laughing and networking and showing off. Emma spotted Marcus almost immediately. He was standing near the staircase, looking handsome in his tuxedo, talking to a group of executives. And right beside him, with her hand possessively on his arm, was Victoria Hamilton, the boss's wife, the woman he'd been having an affair with. Victoria was wearing a red dress that probably cost more than a car, and a diamond necklace that caught the light every time she moved. She was beautiful in a cold, sharp way, and she was looking at Marcus like she owned him. Neither of them had seen Emma yet. No one had noticed her slip into the ballroom, just another face in the crowd. "Ready?" Richard Sterling asked quietly beside her. Emma took a deep breath. "Ready." She started walking across the ballroom floor, and as she did, people started to notice her. Conversations stopped. People turned to stare. Emma kept her head high and walked straight toward Marcus. She was 10 feet away when Marcus finally saw her. His face went from confusion to shock to absolute rage in about 3 seconds. "Emma?" His voice was loud enough that everyone nearby turned to look. "What the hell are you doing here?" Emma stopped right in front of him, calm and composed. "Hello, Marcus. I decided to come to your party after all." Victoria Hamilton looked Emma up and down with disgust. "This is your wife?" "Marcus, darling, you didn't tell me she'd be crashing our event." Security should have stopped her at the door. Our event. As if Victoria had any right to call it that. As if she wasn't just the boss's wife playing at being important. "Emma, you need to leave," Marcus hissed, grabbing her arm. His grip was tight, angry. "You're embarrassing me. You don't belong here." Emma looked down at his hand on her arm, then back up at his face. "Don't touch me." Something in her voice made Marcus let go. He looked uncertain now, like he was seeing something in Emma that he'd never noticed before. "Who let her in?" Victoria demanded, looking around for security. "Someone needs to remove this girl before she ruins everything." That's when it happened. That's when Victoria Hamilton grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter's tray and threw it directly in Emma's face. The liquid hit Emma like a cold slap, soaking her hair and dress, running down her face and onto the marble floor. The entire ballroom went silent. 300 people stopped their conversations to stare at the poor girl in the wet dress being humiliated by the rich woman in diamonds. And Marcus, Emma's husband, the man who'd promised to love and protect her, stood on the grand staircase and said the words that would seal his fate forever. "This is exactly why you don't belong here. Look at you. You're an embarrassment. Your dress probably cost less than the napkins at this party." Emma stood there, champagne dripping from her hair, and looked up at her husband. She saw Victoria Hamilton smirking beside him. She saw Patricia Chen, Marcus's mother, watching from across the room with satisfaction on her face. And Emma thought about her father, Carlos Rodriguez, the man who'd built a $20 billion empire, who'd sacrificed everything to keep her safe, who'd loved her so much that he'd given up his own life with her to protect her from danger. She thought about all those years she'd believed she was worthless, that she'd been abandoned, that no one wanted her. She'd been wrong. She'd never been worthless. She'd just been surrounded by people who couldn't see her value. "I should have listened to my mother," Marcus continued, his voice echoing through the silent ballroom. "She told me not to marry trash from the streets. She told me you'd never be good enough for our family. And you know what? She was right." Emma felt something break inside her chest, but it wasn't her heart. It was the last bit of hope she'd been holding on to, the last piece of love she'd felt for Marcus. And as it broke, something else took its place. Certainty, power, knowledge of exactly who she was and what she was worth. Emma reached up slowly and wiped the champagne from her face. Then she smiled. It was the kind of smile that made Marcus take a step back on the staircase. It was the kind of smile that made Victoria Hamilton's smirk falter. "You're right, Marcus," Emma said, her voice clear and steady and loud enough for everyone to hear. "I never belonged here. I was always meant for something so much bigger." She turned and started walking toward the door, her wet dress leaving a trail of champagne drops across the marble floor. Behind her, she heard Marcus laugh with relief. "That's right, just leave. Go back to whatever hole you crawled out of." But he didn't get to finish his sentence, because at that exact moment, the massive doors to the ballroom opened, and Richard Sterling walked in, followed by 2 men in expensive suits carrying briefcases. "Excuse me," Richard's voice rang out across the ballroom. "I'm looking for Mrs. Emma Rodriguez." Emma stopped and turned around slowly. "I'm Emma Rodriguez." Richard Sterling walked across the ballroom floor until he stood beside her. Then he pulled out a document from his briefcase and held it up for everyone to see. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard announced to the silent room, Allow me to introduce Emma Rodriguez, sole heir to the Rodriguez technology empire, and as of 6 months ago, the beneficiary of a $20 billion fortune, making her one of the wealthiest women in the world. You could have heard a pin drop in that ballroom. Marcus's face went completely white. Victoria Hamilton's mouth fell open. Patricia Chin looked like she might faint. Furthermore, Richard continued, looking directly at Marcus, I am here to inform Mr. Marcus Chun that divorce proceedings will begin immediately on behalf of Mrs. Rodriguez. Citing adultery, emotional abuse, and fraud, Mr. Chun will receive absolutely nothing from this divorce as per the prenuptial agreement he signed, which clearly states that in the event of proven infidelity, all assets remain with Mrs. Rodriguez. Wait! Marcus stumbled down the stairs, his face panicked now. Wait, Emma, let me explain. Don't, Emma said quietly, but her voice cut through the room like a blade. Don't say another word to me, Marcus. You had your chance to love me when you thought I was nothing. You chose to mock me, to humiliate me, to tell me I was trash. Well, guess what? I'm not trash. I never was. You just couldn't see my value because you were too busy looking down at me. She turned to Richard Sterling. Let's go. I think I'm done with this party. As Emma walked toward the door, the entire ballroom of people, all those wealthy, successful individuals who'd whispered about her and looked down on her, parted to let her through. Some of them looked ashamed. Some looked shocked. Many looked like they wanted to say something, to apologize, to suddenly be her friend now that they knew who she really was. But Emma didn't stop. She walked out of that ballroom with her head held high, leaving Marcus Chun standing on the staircase, staring after the woman he'd thought was worthless. The woman who was actually worth more than everyone in that room combined. Behind her, Emma heard chaos erupting. People shouting questions, Marcus calling her name, Victoria Hamilton's voice sharp with panic as she realized she'd just thrown champagne at a billionaire. But Emma didn't look back. She walked out into the cool night air, climbed into the silver Rolls-Royce, and as they drove away from the Grandview Hotel, Emma finally allowed herself to cry. But this time, they weren't tears of sadness or pain. They were tears of relief, of freedom, of a girl who'd spent her whole life believing she was abandoned and worthless, finally discovering that she'd been loved and valued all along. What happens now? Emma asked Richard Sterling as the city lights blurred past the car windows. Richard smiled. Now, Ms. Rodriguez, your real life begins. And somewhere up in heaven, Carlos Rodriguez, billionaire, father, and the man who'd loved his daughter enough to disappear from her life to keep her safe, smiled too. Emma couldn't sleep that night. She lay in the massive king-sized bed of the presidential suite at the Meridian Hotel, a room Richard Sterling had arranged for her, saying she shouldn't return to the apartment she'd shared with Marcus, and stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the evening in her mind, the champagne dripping down her face, Marcus's cruel words echoing through the ballroom, the look of absolute horror on his face when Richard Sterling announced who she really was. Her phone had been ringing nonstop since she'd left the gala. 53 missed calls from Marcus. 27 from Patricia Chin. Even Victoria Hamilton had somehow gotten her number and called 12 times. Emma had turned off the sound and watched the screen light up over and over again, like fireflies trapped in glass. She didn't answer any of them. At 3 in the morning, Emma finally got out of bed and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. From 42 stories up, the city looked like a blanket of lights, beautiful and distant and cold. Somewhere down there was the apartment she'd cleaned obsessively, trying to make it perfect for a husband who never appreciated it. Somewhere down there was Rosie's diner, where she'd worked until her feet bled, serving coffee to strangers while dreaming of a better life. And somewhere down there was Marcus, probably panicking, probably calculating, probably trying to figure out how to fix what he'd broken. Emma's reflection in the window looked like a stranger. Her face was bare of the makeup from the gala. Her hair was loose and tangled, and she was wearing the hotel's expensive silk robe. But it was her eyes that looked different. They weren't the eyes of a scared girl anymore. They were the eyes of someone who'd walked through fire and survived. Her phone lit up again. Marcus. Again. This time Emma picked it up. Not to answer, but to read the texts he'd been sending all night. Emma, please answer. I can explain everything. It was all a misunderstanding. Victoria means nothing to me. Emma, you have to understand. I was under so much pressure. I didn't mean those things I said. Please, we need to talk. You're my wife. Emma, my mother is very upset. You owe her an explanation. Why are you doing this to me? After everything I've done for you? If you don't answer me, I'm coming to find you. Emma, answer your phone. Baby, please. I love you. I've always loved you. Let me prove it to you. Emma read each message twice, and with each one, she felt less pain and more clarity. This was who Marcus really was. Not the charming man who'd walked into Rosie's diner 3 years ago. Not the person who'd told her she was strong and beautiful. This desperate, manipulative person who'd only just now realized what he'd lost. No, he hadn't lost anything because he'd never actually had her. Not her real self. He'd had the version of Emma who'd been too broken and too lonely to see that she deserved better. Emma typed one message back. Don't contact me again. My lawyer will be in touch. Then she blocked his number, and Patricia's, and Victoria's, and everyone else who'd looked down on her at that party. The sun was just starting to rise when Emma finally fell asleep, and when she woke up 4 hours later, she felt different. Lighter somehow, like she'd been carrying a heavy backpack for years and had finally been allowed to set it down. There was a knock on the hotel suite door at exactly 9 o'clock. Emma opened it to find Richard Sterling standing there with 2 assistants carrying garment bags and a rolling briefcase. Good morning, Ms. Rodriguez, Richard said with a warm smile. I hope you slept well. We have a very busy day ahead of us. Busy how? Emma asked, letting them into the suite. Well, first things first, Richard said, gesturing to his assistants, who began hanging the garment bags in the closet. You'll need appropriate attire for the meetings we have scheduled. I took the liberty of having several options sent over. Business suits, casual wear, whatever you're comfortable with. Emma looked at the garment bags, then back at Richard. Meetings? Ms. Rodriguez, Richard said gently, sitting down on one of the suite's plush sofas and indicating that Emma should sit across from him. You're now the owner of Rodriguez Technology, one of the largest tech companies in the world. You have board meetings to attend, executives who need to meet you, facilities to visit, and about 10,000 decisions that have been waiting for your approval for the past 6 months. The weight of it hit Emma all at once. She wasn't just rich. She was responsible for an entire company, for employees and products and decisions that would affect thousands of people. I don't know anything about running a company, Emma said, feeling panic rising in her chest. I never even finished my business degree. I can't. Ms. Rodriguez, Richard interrupted kindly. Your father didn't expect you to know everything on day one. That's why he built an excellent team of executives who have been running the company smoothly in your absence. Your CFO, Miranda Lawson, is one of the best financial minds in the industry. Your head of operations, David Chen, no relation to your husband, by the way, has been with the company for 15 years. You have people to help you learn. But they need to meet you. They need to know who their new leader is. Emma took a deep breath. Okay, when do we start? Richard smiled. That's the spirit. But first, there's someone who wants to see you. Someone who knew your father very well and has been waiting a very long time to meet you. 20 minutes later, Emma was dressed in a beautiful navy blue business suit that fit her perfectly, her hair pulled back in a professional style. She barely recognized herself in the mirror, but in a good way. She looked capable, strong, like someone who could walk into a boardroom and belong there. Richard drove her across the city in the Rolls-Royce, and Emma watched the familiar streets pass by with new eyes. She'd taken buses down these roads, walked these sidewalks in cheap shoes that gave her blisters, counted pennies to afford bus fare. Now she was riding in a car that cost more than most people's houses, wearing a suit that probably cost more than she used to make in 3 months of working 3 jobs. The world looked the same, but everything was different. They pulled up to a building Emma had never been to before. A tall glass tower with Rodriguez Technology, written in silver letters across the front. Emma's breath caught in her throat. This was her father's building, his company, and now it was hers. Your father's office is on the top floor, Richard explained as they rode the private elevator up. No one has been inside since he passed. He left explicit instructions that it should remain untouched until you were ready to see it. The elevator doors opened directly into a stunning office space. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. There was a massive desk made of dark wood, bookshelves lined with books and awards, and photographs. Dozens of photographs covering an entire wall. Emma walked slowly toward the photographs, her heart pounding. And there, in frame after frame, was her father, Carlos Rodriguez, older than she remembered him, but with the same kind eyes, the same warm smile she'd seen in her few precious childhood memories. But what made Emma's eyes fill with tears were the other photographs. Pictures of her. School photos from every year she'd been in foster care. A picture of her graduating high school, taken from a distance but clearly showing her face. A photo of her working at Rosie's Diner, laughing at something a customer had said. Pictures of her at her community college, walking across campus with her backpack. Her father had been watching her. All these years, she hadn't been alone. He'd been there, in the shadows, making sure she was safe, documenting her life even though he couldn't be part of it. "He loved you very much," a voice said from behind her. Emma turned to see an elderly woman standing in the doorway. She was small and elegant, with white hair and warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. She was wearing a simple but expensive dress, and she was looking at Emma like she was seeing a ghost. "I'm sorry," the woman said, wiping at her eyes. "You just look so much like him. The same eyes, the same determined chin." "Who are you?" Emma asked softly. "My name is Rosa Martinez," the woman said, walking into the office. "I was your father's personal assistant for 30 years. I was also his friend. And I'm the person who helped him keep track of you all these years." Rosa walked to the wall of photographs and gently touched one. Emma at age 12, playing basketball in a park. "This one was particularly hard for him," Rosa said quietly. "It was your birthday. He wanted so badly to be there, to give you a gift, to tell you happy birthday. But he knew he couldn't. So he had this investigator take this picture, and your father sat in his office alone that night, looking at it, crying because he couldn't be the father you deserve." Emma's tears were falling freely now. "Why did he have to leave?" "Richard said it was to protect me." "But protect me from what?" Rosa sighed and gestured to the chairs in front of Carlos's desk. "Sit down, Mija. There's a lot you need to know." Emma sat, and Rosa settled into the chair beside her, taking Emma's hand in both of hers. The older woman's hands were warm and soft, and somehow comforting. "Your father built Rodriguez Technology from nothing," Rosa began. "He was a genius, but more than that, he was a good man who wanted to make products that would help people. When you were young, the company was just starting to become successful. But success brings attention, and not all of it is good." Rosa paused, choosing her words carefully. "There was a man named Viktor Kozlov. He was involved in organized crime, but he presented himself as a legitimate businessman. He wanted to use your father's technology for illegal purposes, weapon systems, surveillance equipment that could be sold to dictatorships, things that your father would never agree to create." Emma's blood ran cold. "What happened?" "Your father refused, of course," Rosa continued. "And Viktor Kozlov didn't take rejection well. He started making threats. First against your father, then against your mother, and finally against you. He said that if Carlos didn't cooperate, he would take what was most precious to him, his daughter." Emma remembered being 8 years old, remembered her father seeming stressed and worried in those last few weeks before he disappeared. She'd thought it was just work troubles. She'd had no idea someone was threatening to kidnap her. "Your father went to the police, to the FBI, but Viktor Kozlov was very careful. He never made direct threats that could be recorded or proven. It was all done through intermediaries, all deniable. And your father realized that as long as he was connected to you, as long as people knew you were Carlos Rodriguez's daughter, you would always be a target. So he faked his death," Emma whispered. "He did more than that," Rosa said. "He created an entire new identity for himself, put you in foster care under a false name so you couldn't be traced back to him, and then he hunted Viktor Kozlov. It took him 3 years, But eventually, he gathered enough evidence to put Kozlov and his entire organization in prison for life. Emma's eyes widened. My father did that? Rosa smiled sadly. Your father was many things, Mija. A brilliant businessman, yes, but also a fierce protector. He spent 3 years of his life making sure the man who threatened you would never hurt anyone again. And then, when it was finally safe, when Kozlov was locked away forever, your father faced the hardest decision of his life. Why didn't he come back for me? Emma asked, even though part of her already knew the answer. Because by then, you were 11 years old, Rosa said gently. You'd been in foster care for 3 years. You'd built a life without him. And your father was terrified that if he suddenly appeared, claiming to be the father who'd abandoned you, it would hurt you even more. He was afraid you'd hate him. He was afraid that after 3 years of believing he was dead, having him come back would be more traumatic than healing. Rosa squeezed Emma's hand. So he made another impossible choice. He decided to stay away but to make sure you were always protected, always watched over, always safe. He built his company into an empire so that one day, when he was gone, you would inherit everything. You would never have to struggle the way he had struggled. You would have every opportunity in the world. He could have at least told me, Emma said, her voice breaking. He could have sent a letter or... He tried, Rosa interrupted gently. Oh, Mija, he tried so many times. I have boxes of letters he wrote to you. Hundreds of them. One for every month, sometimes more. Letters explaining everything, apologizing, telling you how proud he was of you, how much he loved you. But every time he got close to sending one, he would lose his nerve. He was so afraid that you would read his words and feel angry, or confused, or hurt even more. Rosa stood and walked to a cabinet built into the wall. She opened it to reveal shelves full of sealed envelopes, each one labeled with a date. Years and years of letters, a father's love expressed in words his daughter had never received. He wanted you to have these after he was gone, Rosa said. He thought maybe it would be easier for you to understand his choices if you didn't have to face him directly, if you could read his words without the pressure of having to respond. Emma stood on shaky legs and walked to the cabinet. She reached out and touched the nearest envelope. It was labeled, Emma, age 9, Christmas. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. Can I? Emma asked, looking at Rosa. Mija, everything in this office is yours now. Everything your father had is yours, including his love, his regrets, and his hope that someday you would understand. Emma carefully opened the envelope and pulled out several handwritten pages. Her father's handwriting was neat and precise, and as she began to read, his voice seemed to come alive on the page. My dearest Emma, today is Christmas and you are 9 years old. I wonder if your foster family got you presents. I wonder if you're happy, if you're safe, if you're thinking about me at all, or if you've forgotten what I look like. I bought you a present. It's a locket with a picture of you and your mother inside. Your mother loved you so much, Emma. She would be so proud of the strong, brave girl you're becoming. I keep the locket in my desk drawer, and sometimes I hold it and pretend I'm giving it to you, watching your face light up when you open it. But I can't give it to you. I can't risk someone seeing me, recognizing me, connecting you back to me. Viktor Kozlov is still out there, and until he's not, I have to stay away. I know this doesn't make sense. I know that if you knew I was alive and choosing not to see you, you would think I don't love you. But Emma, I love you more than anything in this world. Staying away from you is the hardest thing I've ever done. And I do it every single day because keeping you safe is more important than my own happiness. One day, when you're older, I hope you'll understand. I hope you'll know that every decision I made was because I love you. And I hope you'll forgive me. Merry Christmas, my beautiful daughter. I'm watching over you always. Love, your papa. Emma couldn't see the words anymore through her tears. She clutched the letter to her chest and sobbed, grieving for the father she'd lost twice. Once when he disappeared, and again when he died before they could reunite. Rosa wrapped her arms around Emma and held her while she cried, murmuring soothing words in Spanish. The same words Emma's mother used to say when Emma was small and scared. Ya, mijita. To do está bien. You're safe now. They stood there for a long time, surrounded by photographs and letters, and the ghost of a man who'd loved his daughter enough to break both their hearts to keep her safe. While Emma was learning about her father's sacrifice, across the city in the apartment they'd once shared, Marcus Chun was having the worst morning of his life. He'd been awake all night, his mind racing, his phone pressed to his ear as he called Emma over and over, listening to it ring and ring before going to voicemail. When he finally tried to send a text and got an error message saying he'd been blocked, Marcus had thrown his phone across the room in frustration, watching it shatter against the wall. Now he sat on the couch in the living room, the couch Emma had picked out from a secondhand store because they needed to save money, a rule that apparently only applied to her, and stared at his laptop screen. News of Emma's inheritance was everywhere. Mystery heiress revealed. Emma Rodriguez inherits $20 billion technology empire. From rags to riches. The incredible story of the waitress who became a billionaire overnight. Gala humiliation. Husband mocks wife moments before learning she's worth billions. That last headline had a video attached. Marcus's hands shook as he clicked on it. Someone at the gala had recorded the entire thing on their phone. Victoria throwing the champagne, Marcus's cruel words, Emma standing there soaked and humiliated, and then Richard Sterling's dramatic entrance and announcement. The video had 7 million views. 7 million people had watched Marcus Chun reveal himself to be the worst kind of person. The comments were brutal. Imagine being so stupid you throw away a billionaire wife because you thought she was poor. This man is the definition of gold digger. He only loved her when he thought she had nothing so he could feel superior. That woman in red who threw the champagne better lawyer up. You don't assault billionaires and get away with it. I hope she takes him for everything in the divorce. Oh wait, he has nothing. LOL. The way he called her trash and then his face when he found out. Priceless. Marcus slammed the laptop shut, but he couldn't escape the truth. He'd destroyed his life in less than 5 minutes, and it had all been caught on camera for the world to see. His phone, the new one he'd had to buy that morning after destroying his other one, rang. It was his mother. Marcus Chin. You pick up this phone right now. Patricia's voice came through sharp and angry before he'd even said hello. Mom, do you have any idea what you've done? Patricia shrieked. Every one of my friends has called me this morning. Every single one. They're all asking about the video. They're asking how my son could be so stupid, so cruel, so... Mom, please, I need to think. You need to fix this, Patricia demanded. You need to call Emma and apologize and do whatever it takes to get her back. Do you understand me? She's worth $20 billion, Marcus. $20 billion. We could have been set for life. We could have been one of the most powerful families in the country. I tried calling her, Marcus said desperately. She blocked me. She won't answer. Then you go to her, Patricia shouted. You get down on your knees and you beg for forgiveness. You tell her you love her, that you made a terrible mistake, that you'll spend the rest of your life making it up to her. But Marcus trailed off. He'd been about to say, but I don't love her. But he stopped himself. Did it matter? Did his feelings matter anymore when Emma was worth more money than he could even imagine? You what? Patricia demanded. You don't love her? Well, learn to love her, Marcus. Learn to love her $20 billion. Do you think your father and I married for love? We married because it made sense, because it was a good match. And you will do the same thing, or so help me. I will disown you myself. She hung up without saying goodbye, and Marcus sat there in the silent apartment, feeling the walls close in around him. There was a sharp knock on the door. Marcus jumped up, hope flaring in his chest. Maybe it was Emma. Maybe she'd come back to talk to him, to give him a chance to explain. He flung open the door, but it wasn't Emma. It was Victoria Hamilton, and she looked like she'd been crying. Her perfect makeup was smudged, her hair was messy, and she was wearing sweatpants and a hoodie instead of her usual designer clothes. Victoria? What are you doing here? Victoria pushed past him into the apartment. My husband kicked me out, she said, her voice shaking. He saw the video. Everyone saw the video. He said I've humiliated him and the company by assaulting. She laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. By assaulting a billionaire heiress. His lawyers called me this morning. He's filing for divorce, and because I signed a prenup that has a morality clause, I'm not getting anything. Nothing, Marcus. 20 years of marriage, and I'm getting nothing. Marcus stared at her. I'm sorry, but I don't know what you want me to. We need to fix this. Victoria grabbed his arms, her fingers digging in. We need to apologize to Emma together. We need to tell her it was all a huge misunderstanding, that we're so sorry, that she blocked me, Marcus said flatly. She won't talk to me. Victoria's face crumpled. Then we're both ruined. Do you understand that? You and me, we're both completely ruined. I'll be known as the woman who threw champagne at a billionaire. You'll be known as the husband who mocked his wife right before finding out she was worth 20 billion. We'll be laughingstocks for the rest of our lives. Marcus pulled away from her. You should go. What? You should go, Victoria. I need to think. I need to figure out how to fix this. Fix it. Victoria laughed again, that same harsh sound. Marcus, there is no fixing this. We humiliated her in front of hundreds of people. We called her trash. I threw a drink in her face. She's not going to forgive us just because we say we're sorry. Then I'll make her forgive me, Marcus said, a dangerous edge creeping into his voice. She's still my wife. We're still legally married. That has to count for something. Victoria looked at him like he was insane. Marcus, she's filing for divorce. Her lawyer already sent papers to you. Didn't you see them? Marcus walked to the kitchen counter where he'd been throwing all the mail without looking at it. Sure enough, there was a thick manila envelope marked, "Legal documents time sensitive." His hands shook as he tore it open. The divorce papers were straightforward and brutal. Emma Rodriguez was filing for divorce from Marcus Chen on grounds of adultery and emotional cruelty. Due to the prenuptial agreement they'd signed before marriage, a prenup Marcus had insisted on when he thought he was the one with more to lose, Emma would retain all of her assets, and Marcus would receive nothing. Furthermore, there was a restraining order being filed. Marcus was not to contact Emma directly, not to come within 500 feet of her, and not to make any public statements about her or their marriage without approval from her legal team. Marcus read it 3 times, unable to believe what he was seeing. Prenup. He'd made Emma sign a prenup when they got married because his mother had insisted, because he'd wanted to protect his savings and his future earnings from a poor girl who might try to take advantage of him. The irony was almost funny. Almost. I have to see her, Marcus said, crumpling the papers in his fist. I have to talk to her face to face. She'll listen to me if I can just... There's a restraining order, Marcus, Victoria said tiredly. If you go near her, you'll be arrested. I don't care, Marcus said, and he realized he meant it. His entire life was falling apart. His wife was a billionaire who hated him. His mother was furious with him. His colleagues had seen the video. His boss, Victoria's husband, would probably fire him any day now. He had nothing left to lose. I'm going to find her, Marcus said, grabbing his jacket. I'm going to explain everything, and she's going to understand. She has to understand. She loved me, Victoria, for 3 years. She loved me no matter how I treated her. That kind of love doesn't just disappear overnight. Victoria just looked at him with pity in her eyes. Marcus, that kind of love doesn't disappear overnight. But you spent 3 years killing it little by little, every time you mocked her, every time you told her she wasn't good enough, every time you made her feel small. And last night, at that gala, you finally killed it completely. That love is gone, and you're the one who destroyed it. But Marcus wasn't listening. He was already out the door, his mind racing with plans. He knew Emma. He knew how to talk to her, how to manipulate her emotions, how to make her feel guilty or sorry for him. He'd been doing it for 3 years. He would find her, and he would get her back, and he would fix this disaster he'd created. Marcus Chun was completely convinced that he could win back his billionaire wife. He was absolutely, completely wrong. Emma spent 3 hours in her father's office, reading letter after letter, learning about the man who'd sacrificed everything for her. Rosa sat with her the whole time, answering questions, sharing memories, helping Emma understand the complicated love that had driven her father to make such painful choices. By the time Richard Sterling knocked on the office door to remind them about the afternoon meetings, Emma felt like she'd been put through an emotional hurricane. But she also felt something else, connected to her father in a way she'd never expected. Understanding his choices didn't erase the pain of growing up without him, but it helped. It helped a lot. "Are you ready to meet your executive team?" Richard asked gently. Emma looked at Rosa, who smiled and squeezed her hand. "You can do this, Mija. Your father believed in you, and so do I." Emma stood up, smoothed down her suit, and took a deep breath. "I'm ready." The boardroom was on the same floor as her father's office, just down the hall. When Emma walked in, 12 people stood up from their seats around a massive conference table. They all looked professional and polished and slightly nervous to be meeting their new boss. A woman in her 50s with short gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes stepped forward first. "Ms. Rodriguez, I'm Miranda Lawson, CFO of Rodriguez Technology. On behalf of the entire executive team, I want to say how deeply sorry we are for your loss. Your father was an exceptional man and an exceptional leader. We all miss him very much." There was a murmur of agreement from around the table. "Thank you," Emma said, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. "I know I have a lot to learn. I hope you'll all be patient with me as I figure out how to do this." An older man with kind eyes smiled. "Ms. Rodriguez, your father spent years preparing this company to run smoothly no matter what happened. You don't have to know everything on day one. That's why you have us." For the next 2 hours, Emma's executives walked her through the company. They showed her financial reports, explained product lines, discussed ongoing projects and future plans. Emma's head was spinning with information, but she forced herself to focus, to ask questions, to show these people that she was serious about learning. Miranda Lawson seemed particularly impressed. "You have good instincts," she told Emma during a break. "You ask the right questions. Your father would be proud." At 5 o'clock, Richard Sterling pulled Emma aside. "I have some news. Marcus tried to come to the Rodriguez Technology building this afternoon. Security stopped him at the entrance. He was demanding to see you." Emma's stomach tightened. "Did they let him in?" "Absolutely not. The restraining order goes into effect tonight, but I made sure security knew not to allow him anywhere near you even before it's official. He made quite a scene, apparently, yelling about how you're his wife and he has a right to speak to you." Emma closed her eyes. Of course Marcus would do this. Of course he wouldn't just accept that it was over. "There's something else," Richard said carefully. "Your apartment, the one you shared with Marcus. It's in his name. Legally, you don't have any claim to it. I know you have belongings there that you'll want to retrieve." Emma thought about the apartment. Her clothes, her textbooks, the few personal items she'd accumulated over the years. None of it was particularly valuable, but it was hers. "I'll go get my things tomorrow," Emma said. "I'll arrange for security to accompany you," Richard said firmly. "And I'll make sure Marcus is not there. We'll have him removed from the premises for a few hours so you can pack in peace." Emma nodded, grateful. She wasn't afraid of Marcus, exactly, but she also didn't want to face him yet. She wasn't ready for whatever manipulation or guilt-tripping he would try to use on her. That night, back in her hotel suite, Emma ordered room service, something she'd never done in her life, and sat by the window looking out at the city. Her phone, which she'd turned back on, had hundreds of new messages. Friend requests on social media from people she'd never met. Emails from news organizations wanting interviews. Text messages from old co-workers at Rosie's Diner, some congratulating her, others asking if she remembered them and could she please help them out financially. It was overwhelming. Emma turned the phone off again and just sat in silence, trying to process everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. Yesterday, she'd been Emma Chun, the poor embarrassing wife who didn't belong at fancy parties. Today, she was Emma Rodriguez, billionaire heiress and CEO of a technology empire. Tomorrow, She would face Marcus one more time to get her belongings and close that chapter of her life forever. Emma had no idea that tomorrow would bring even more chaos than today had brought. She had no idea that Marcus wasn't planning to give up without a fight. And she definitely had no idea that her biggest challenge was still ahead of her. Emma woke up early the next morning, her stomach churning with anxiety about going back to the apartment. Richard had texted her the night before confirming that Marcus would be required to leave the premises from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., giving Emma 4 hours to collect her belongings. Rosa had insisted on coming with her, along with 2 security guards Richard had hired. "You shouldn't have to face this alone, Mija," Rosa had said firmly. At exactly 10:15 a.m., Emma pulled up to her old apartment building in the Rolls-Royce, with Rosa beside her and the security team following in a second vehicle. The building looked the same as it always had. A nice building in a good neighborhood, far nicer than anywhere Emma had lived before she married Marcus, but nothing compared to the hotel suite she was staying in now. Emma had lived here for 2 years, and she tried so hard to make it feel like home. She'd cleaned every corner obsessively. She'd cooked dinners that Marcus barely ate. She'd decorated with cheap items from discount stores, trying to make the space warm and inviting. Now, walking back into it, all Emma felt was sadness for the girl who tried so hard to please a man who would never appreciate her. The apartment was a mess. Dishes piled in the sink, clothes thrown on the furniture, beer bottles on the coffee table. Marcus had clearly been living like a bachelor since Emma left, and not a very clean bachelor at that. "Oh, Mijo," Rosa said, looking around with disapproval. "This is how he lives when you're not here to take care of him? Good riddance to this one." Emma managed a small smile and headed to the bedroom. Her clothes were still in the closet, pushed to one side to make room for Marcus's expanding wardrobe. She'd brought suitcases, and she started methodically packing her things. Most of her clothes were old and worn, nothing like the designer items in the garment bags Richard had provided. But they were hers, and some of them held memories she wasn't ready to let go of yet. She was packing up her textbooks from community college when she heard shouting from the living room. Emma's heart stopped. She ran out of the bedroom to find Marcus standing in the apartment, his face red and angry, facing off against the 2 security guards who'd positioned themselves between him and Rosa. "Get out of my way," Marcus was yelling. "This is my apartment. I have every right to be here." "Sir, you were legally required to vacate the premises until 2 p.m., one of the security guards said calmly. "If you don't leave immediately, we'll have to call the police." "Emma," Marcus shouted, catching sight of her. "Emma, please, I need to talk to you. Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Emma stood frozen in the bedroom doorway. Marcus looked terrible. Unshaven, his eyes bloodshot, his clothes wrinkled like he'd slept in them. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days, which he probably hadn't. "Marcus, you need to leave," Emma said, keeping her voice steady. "The restraining order." "I don't care about the restraining order." Marcus pushed past the security guards, or tried to. They immediately blocked him, and one of them pulled out his phone, clearly calling the police. "Emma, please." Marcus's voice cracked. "I know I messed up. I know I said terrible things. But you have to understand. I was stressed. I was under pressure. I didn't mean any of it." "Yes, you did," Emma said quietly. "You meant every word, Marcus. You've been meaning those words for years. You just finally said them out loud." "No!" Marcus's eyes were wild now, desperate. "I love you. I've always loved you. I got confused. I let other people influence me. But deep down I've always loved you." Rosa made a disgusted sound. "Young man, if this is what you call love, then I'm glad Emma is divorcing you." Marcus's eyes flicked to Rosa, then back to Emma. "Who is this? Emma, who are these people you're surrounding yourself with? They're turning you against me. They're poisoning your mind. These people," Emma said, her voice getting stronger, "are helping me see the truth that I've been avoiding for 3 years. You never loved me, Marcus. You loved the idea of rescuing a poor girl. You loved feeling superior to me. But you never actually loved me. That's not true." Marcus took a step forward, and both security guards moved to block him. Emma, I know about your father now. I know about the money, and I realize I made a terrible mistake. But we can start over. We can build a new life together. A real partnership. There it was. The truth Emma had been waiting for. Marcus didn't want her back because he loved her. He wanted her back because of the money. Get out, Emma said. Emma, get out. Emma's voice rose, surprising even herself. Get out of this apartment. Get out of my life, and don't ever contact me again. Whatever we had, and Marcus, it wasn't much, it's over. Completely, totally, permanently over. Marcus's face twisted with rage. You think you're so special now, don't you? You think because you got lucky and inherited some money, you're better than me? You're still the same pathetic waitress I found serving coffee in a diner. You're still nothing without me. Sir, the police are on their way, the security guard announced. I suggest you leave now before they arrive and arrest you for violating the restraining order and trespassing. Marcus looked around wildly, like a cornered animal. Then his eyes landed on Emma again, and his expression changed. The anger melted away, replaced by something calculating. Fine, he said, holding up his hands in surrender. Fine, I'll go. But Emma, you should know something. Victoria and we're planning to go to the press. We're going to tell everyone that you're not the innocent victim you're pretending to be. We're going to tell them how you used me, how you hid your inheritance from me, how you manipulated me into marrying you so you could humiliate me later. But what she really wanted, what she needed, was to do something for herself. Something that reminded her of who she'd been before Marcus, before the money, before everything got so complicated. Take me to Rosie's diner, Emma said. Rosa looked at her curiously. The place where you used to work? Emma nodded. I want to see it one more time. I want to remember why I fought so hard to survive, even when things were terrible. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to Rosie's diner. It looked exactly the same. A small, slightly run-down building with a neon sign that flickered and booths with red vinyl seats visible through the windows. Emma had spent so many hours here, her feet aching, her back sore, serving coffee and pancakes to strangers and dreaming of a better life. I'll wait here, Rosa said, understanding that Emma needed to do this alone. Emma walked into the diner, and the bell above the door chimed, just like it had 1,000 times before. The smell hit her immediately. Coffee, bacon, maple syrup, and that distinctive diner smell that was impossible to describe but instantly familiar. Rosie herself was behind the counter, her gray hair pulled back in a bun, her apron stained with food. She looked up when Emma entered, and her eyes went wide. Emma? Emma Rodriguez? Oh my God. Honey, is that really you? Emma smiled. Hi, Rosie. Rosie came around the counter and pulled Emma into a fierce hug. I saw the news. I couldn't believe it. My little Emma. A billionaire. I told all the customers. I said, I knew that girl was special. I knew it from the first day she walked in here looking for a job. Emma laughed, hugging Rosie back. The older woman had always been kind to her, had always given her extra tips from her own pocket when Emma was struggling to pay rent, had always made sure Emma ate at least one good meal per shift. Sit, sit, Rosie insisted, leading Emma to a booth. Let me make you something. What do you want? Anything you want, it's on the house. Pancakes? Your favorite omelet? Just coffee, Emma said, sliding into the booth. The vinyl seat was cracked and patched with duct tape, but it felt more comfortable than any of the expensive furniture in Marcus's apartment had ever felt. Rosie brought her a cup of coffee, poured exactly the way Emma liked it. Lots of cream, 2 sugars, and sat down across from her. So, Rosie said, her eyes twinkling, I heard your no-good husband got what was coming to him. Please tell me the video doesn't do it justice. Emma laughed, really laughed, for the first time in days. The video is pretty accurate, actually. Good, Rosie said fiercely. That boy never deserved you. I told you that 3 years ago when you brought him in here, remember? I said, Emma honey, that man looks at you like you're a project, not a partner. But you were so in love, you didn't want to hear it. Emma remembered. She'd been so blinded by Marcus's attention, so desperate for someone to love her, that she'd ignored all the warning signs. You were right, Emma admitted. About everything. Rosie reached across the table and squeezed Emma's hand. So what now? Are you going to run your daddy's company? Are you going to be one of those big-shot business executives? I think so, Emma said. I mean, I have to. It's my responsibility now. But Rosie, I'm scared. What if I'm not good enough? What if I mess everything up? Emma Rodriguez, Rosie said firmly. You worked 3 jobs, put yourself through school, survived foster care, survived a terrible marriage, and you never once gave up. You're one of the strongest people I know. If anyone can run a billion-dollar company, it's you. Emma felt tears burning in her eyes again, but this time they were good tears. Thank you, Rosie. They sat in the diner for another hour, just talking. Rosie told her about the other waitresses, about regular customers, about life at the diner. Emma told Rosie about her father's letters, about Rosa, about the executives who seemed willing to help her learn. When Emma finally stood to leave, Rosie walked her to the door and hugged her one more time. You come back any time, you hear me? Rosie said. I don't care if you're worth 20 billion or 20 cents. This place is always going to be here for you. Emma walked back to the Rolls-Royce feeling lighter than she had in days. Rosa took one look at her face and smiled. Feel better? Rosa asked. Much better, Emma said. As they drove back toward the hotel, Emma's phone buzzed. It was a text from Richard Sterling. News alert. Marcus Chun and Victoria Hamilton have scheduled a press conference for tomorrow morning. They're planning to tell their side of the story. Be prepared. Emma read the message twice, then looked out the window at the city passing by. Let them have their press conference, Emma thought. Let them tell whatever lies they wanted to tell. Emma had something they didn't have. She had the truth. She had her father's love. She had people like Rosa and Rosie and Richard Sterling who believed in her. And most importantly, she had finally learned to believe in herself. Tomorrow would bring whatever it would bring. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, Emma Rodriguez went to sleep feeling free. The morning of Marcus and Victoria's press conference arrived with dark gray clouds covering the sky. Emma woke up at 6 a.m., unable to sleep, her mind racing with anxiety about what they might say. Richard Sterling had called an emergency meeting. When Emma arrived at Rodriguez Technology headquarters, she found Richard, Rosa, Miranda Lawson, and a sharp-eyed lawyer named Jennifer Park waiting for her. Good morning, Ms. Rodriguez, Jennifer said, shaking Emma's hand firmly. Whatever Mr. Chun and Mrs. Hamilton say today, we have legal options. If they lie about you publicly, we can sue them. Emma sat down, accepting the coffee Rosa handed her. What do you think they'll say? Jennifer pulled up a news article on the large screen. They sent out a press release last night. They're calling it The Truth About Emma Rodriguez. A Husband's Heartbreak. They're positioning Marcus as the victim. Emma felt sick. But I didn't know about the inheritance until Richard called me. We know that, Richard said gently, and we have documentation to prove it. Phone records, law firm records, everything. But the public doesn't know that yet, Jennifer said. In the court of public opinion, the first story often becomes the narrative that sticks. Right now, people are on your side because of the video. But if Marcus tells a compelling story, he could turn public opinion against you. Miranda leaned forward. Emma, we think you should hold your own press conference. Today. Right after Marcus holds his. You tell your side. The real story with all the evidence. Emma's hands trembled. I've never talked to reporters. What if I mess up? Rosa squeezed her shoulder. Mija, you just tell the truth. The truth is powerful. We'll prepare you, Jennifer assured her. We'll practice answers, make sure you're comfortable. But Emma, you don't have to do this. We can fight in the courts instead. I just think facing this head-on will be more effective. Emma thought about her father. Carlos Rodriguez had faced down criminals to protect her. He'd sacrificed everything to keep her safe. He'd built an empire through determination and courage. She was his daughter. She had his strength, even if she'd never known it until now. Okay, Emma said, her voice stronger than she felt. "Let's do it. But I want to watch Marcus's press conference first. I want to know exactly what he's saying." Jennifer nodded approvingly. "Smart. We'll watch together, then craft your response." At exactly 9 a.m., Marcus Chen's press conference began. Emma and her team gathered around the conference room screen to watch the live stream. Marcus stood at a podium in a hotel conference room, wearing an expensive suit and a carefully practiced expression of sadness. Victoria Hamilton stood beside him, dressed immaculately, her face arranged in sympathetic concern. Behind them was a banner that read, "Truth Matters." Emma almost laughed at the irony. "Thank you all for coming," Marcus began, his voice somber. "I'm here today to share my side of a story that has been grossly misrepresented in the media. I'm here to tell you the truth about my marriage to Emma Rodriguez." He paused dramatically. 3 years ago, I met Emma when she was working as a waitress. She seemed sweet, genuine, and hardworking. I fell in love with her, or at least with the person I thought she was. I married her despite my family's concerns, despite the differences in our backgrounds, because I believed in our love. Emma watched in disbelief as Marcus painted himself as the devoted husband who'd married beneath his station out of pure love. "What I didn't know," Marcus continued, "was that Emma had been lying to me from the very beginning. She knew about her father. She knew about the inheritance. And she deliberately kept it from me." "That's a lie," Emma said, standing up. "Wait," Jennifer said calmly. "Let him finish. Let him hang himself." Marcus continued. "For 3 years, Emma watched me work hard to provide for us. She watched me stress about money, about my career, about our future. And all the while, she knew she had billions of dollars waiting for her. She could have told me the truth at any time, but she chose to keep me in the dark." Victoria stepped forward. "I want to add something, if I may. I met Emma at several company events, and I tried to be friendly with her. I tried to include her, to help her feel comfortable. But Emma always seemed resentful, hostile even. Now I understand why. She was looking down on all of us, knowing she was secretly wealthier than any of us could imagine." Emma's mouth fell open. "She threw champagne at me. And there's video evidence of that," Jennifer said, making notes. "Keep watching." Marcus took the microphone back. "The incident at the gala has been portrayed as me being cruel to my wife. But the truth is, Emma had been treating me with contempt for months. She'd been distant, cold, pulling away from our marriage. That night, when Victoria accidentally spilled her drink. Accidentally, Emma nearly shouted. I was frustrated. I was hurt. Yes, I said some things I regret. But I was a husband who felt betrayed, who just realized his wife had been playing games with him for years." Marcus's voice cracked, his eyes looking suspiciously shiny. "I loved Emma," he said. "I still love her, and I'm here today to publicly ask her to give our marriage another chance. Not because of the money. I don't want a single penny of her inheritance. I just want my wife back. I want the chance to prove that our love is real, that it's worth fighting for." He looked directly into the camera. "Emma, if you're watching this, please, come home. Let's work this out. Let's show the world that love can overcome anything, even a betrayal like this." The press conference ended with Marcus taking questions, all of which he answered with carefully crafted hurt and dignified forgiveness. When the live stream ended, the conference room was silent. Then Miranda said, "Well, he's a better actor than I gave him credit for." "He's convincing," Jennifer admitted. "If I didn't know the truth, I might believe him." Emma was shaking with anger. "He's lying. About everything. I didn't know about my father until Richard called me. I was never cold or distant. He was the one who treated me terribly. And Victoria didn't accidentally spill her drink." "We know," Richard said calmly. "And we can prove all of it. Emma, are you ready to tell your story?" Emma took a deep breath. "Yes, let's do this." For the next 2 hours, Jennifer and her team prepared Emma for her press conference. They set it up in Rodriguez Technologies' main conference room, with Emma standing at a podium in front of the company logo. At noon, reporters filed in. Emma recognized some from television news. Cameras were everywhere, pointed at her like accusations. Emma gripped the podium, her heart pounding. But then she felt Rose's hand briefly touch her back, a gesture of support, and she remembered why she was doing this. For the truth, and for every person who'd ever been made to feel small by someone who claimed to love them. Emma cleared her throat and began. Good afternoon. My name is Emma Rodriguez, and I'm here to respond to the allegations made by my soon-to-be ex-husband, Marcus Chun, this morning. Her voice was shaky at first, but grew stronger with each word. Marcus claimed that I knew about my inheritance throughout our marriage and deliberately hid it from him. That is categorically false. I learned about my father and my inheritance exactly 5 days ago, when Richard Sterling contacted me for the first time in my life. Richard stepped forward with documents. We have phone records, legal documents, and witness testimony proving I had no contact with my father's estate until last week. My father, Carlos Rodriguez, disappeared from my life when I was 8 years old. I grew up in foster care, believing he had abandoned me. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through community college. Every struggle I faced believing I was alone in the world. Emma's voice caught with emotion, but she pushed through. The truth is, my father didn't abandon me. He disappeared to protect me from people who were threatening my safety. For 15 years, he watched over me from a distance, making sure I was safe but never revealing himself. He left me his entire estate not because I knew about it, but because he loved me and wanted me to have every opportunity. She paused, looking directly into the cameras. Marcus Chun did not marry me knowing I was wealthy. He married me believing I was poor, and he spent 3 years making me feel worthless because of it. He criticized how I dressed, how I talked, where I came from. His mother called me trash. And at the gala, when he thought he was safe from consequences, he said exactly what he'd been thinking all along. That I was an embarrassment, that I didn't belong, that marrying me was a mistake. Jennifer pulled up the gala video on the screen behind Emma. This video has been viewed over 15 million times, Emma said. I'm going to play it again, and I want you to watch carefully. The video played in slow motion, Victoria clearly and deliberately throwing champagne at Emma's face. Marcus on the staircase, his face twisted with disgust. The crowd staring and whispering. Marcus claimed Victoria accidentally spilled her drink. As you can see, that's not what happened. She threw it at me purposefully while Marcus watched. And then he used that moment to publicly humiliate me. Emma's voice was steady now, strong and clear. Marcus also claimed I was cold and distant in our marriage. The truth is, I loved him desperately for 3 years. I worked myself to exhaustion trying to be good enough for him. I tried to fit into his world, even though no one there wanted me. I forgave him every time he made me feel small, every time he chose his career over our relationship, every time he made it clear I was a burden to him. She paused, then spoke softer but more powerfully. I even forgave him when I discovered he was having an affair with Victoria Hamilton. The reporters erupted with questions. Emma held up her hand. We have evidence of the affair. Text messages, emails, witness testimony. Marcus has been involved with Victoria Hamilton for at least 6 months. And yet this morning, he stood at a podium claiming he loved me, that he wanted me back, that our marriage was worth saving. Emma looked directly into the camera. Marcus, you said you loved me, but love doesn't mock. Love doesn't humiliate. Love doesn't make someone feel worthless. What you felt for me was never love. It was ownership. It was the satisfaction of feeling superior to someone you saw as beneath you. And the moment you found out I wasn't beneath you, that I was actually far above you in every way that matters, you panicked. She took a breath. This morning you said you don't want my money. That's interesting, because your lawyer has been fighting hard to challenge our prenuptial agreement and claim a portion of my assets. We have documentation of that as well. Jennifer held up more documents for the cameras. The truth, Emma said, is that Marcus Chin is exactly what he appears to be in that viral video. A man who thought he could treat his wife terribly because she had no power and no way to fight back. He's not asking for a second chance because he loves me. He's here because humiliating a billionaire on camera was a terrible career move, and he's trying to salvage his reputation. Emma's hands released their grip on the podium. I'm not here to destroy Marcus. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because I want every person watching to know that you are not defined by how other people treat you. You are not worthless just because someone makes you feel worthless. And you do not owe your love or forgiveness to people who've spent years proving they don't deserve it. She looked around at the reporters and cameras. My father spent 15 years protecting me, even though it meant sacrificing his relationship with me. He taught me, even though I never knew him, that real love means putting someone else's well-being above your own comfort. Marcus Chin has never done that. Not once in our entire marriage. Emma straightened her shoulders. So no, Marcus, I will not give our marriage another chance. I will not come home. Our divorce will proceed as planned. And I sincerely hope you learn something from this experience about how to treat people with respect and dignity. She gathered her papers. I'll take a few questions now. Hands shot into the air, everyone shouting at once. Emma pointed to a woman in the front row. Ms. Rodriguez, do you regret marrying Marcus Chen? Emma thought honestly. I regret that I didn't see his true character sooner. But I don't regret the experience, because it taught me what I deserve and what I won't accept anymore. Sometimes the hardest lessons are the most valuable. Another reporter. What do you say to people who think you should forgive your husband and work on your marriage? I would say that forgiveness doesn't mean accepting ongoing mistreatment. Emma answered. I can forgive Marcus for the pain he caused while also recognizing he's not someone I should share my life with. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. What are your plans for Rodriguez Technology? Emma smiled for the first time. I'm learning. I have an incredible team teaching me about the company my father built. It's overwhelming and exciting and terrifying all at once. But I'm committed to honoring my father's legacy and continuing his work. One more question, Jennifer announced. Emma pointed to a young woman near the back. Ms. Rodriguez, what would you say to your father if he could hear you right now? Emma felt tears spring to her eyes. She thought about all those letters in her father's office, all those years of watching from a distance, all that love expressed in silence and sacrifice. I would tell him thank you, Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you for protecting me. Thank you for believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself. Thank you for making sure I would be safe and taken care of, even though it meant you couldn't be part of my life. And I would tell him that I understand now. I understand why he made the choices he made, and I forgive him for every moment we lost. She wiped her eyes, not caring that cameras captured her tears. I would tell him that I wish I could have known him, but I'm grateful for the gift he left me. Not the money, although that's life-changing, but the gift of knowing I was loved. That I was always loved, even when I felt most alone. That's worth more than $20 billion. The room was silent for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, several reporters started clapping. It spread through the room until almost everyone was applauding. Emma felt overwhelmed. She nodded her thanks and stepped away as Jennifer ended the press conference. 1 year after the gala that changed everything, Emma Rodriguez stood at the grand opening of the Carlos Rodriguez Foundation, a nonprofit she created to help foster children and at-risk youth. She cut the ribbon surrounded by Rosa, Richard, Miranda, and dozens of people who'd become her family. Rosie from the diner was there too, wearing her best dress and crying happy tears. Your father would be so proud, Rosa whispered. I hope so, Emma said, touching the locket she wore every day. Marcus had been convicted of fraud and sentenced to prison. His lies had unraveled completely when Victoria Hamilton came forward with evidence that Marcus had known about Emma's father for 6 months before the gala and had deliberately orchestrated everything to manipulate her. But Emma rarely thought about Marcus anymore. She was too busy building a life that mattered, leading her father's company with integrity, helping others through her foundation, and proving that worth isn't measured in dollars but in character. That evening, Emma sat in her apartment and wrote in her journal, Dear Dad, it's been a year since I learned the truth about you. I wish I could have known you, but I understand now why you made the choices you made. I'm trying to be the daughter you hoped I'd be, leading your company with integrity, helping others, refusing to let cruel people make me cruel in return. I'm building a life that honors your memory, and I hope you can see it. I love you, Dad. I always will. Emma. Emma closed the journal and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there were other people who felt worthless, who'd been made to feel small by those who should have lifted them up. She couldn't save them all, but she could try. She could use her father's gift to create opportunities, to offer hope, to show people that their worth wasn't determined by anyone else's opinion. She was Emma Rodriguez, survivor, fighter, and proof that you could be broken and still become whole. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rosa. Dinner tomorrow? I'm making your favorite. Emma smiled and typed back. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Emma had started her story as a girl who believed she was alone. She'd been mocked and humiliated by the man who'd promised to love her. But in the end, she discovered something Marcus would never understand. Worth isn't something other people give you. It's something you discover within yourself. And Emma Rodriguez was worth more than $20 billion could ever measure.